Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan, and as you can tell from the title of this video, I was part of a group to be able to do an interview with the devs from Total War Pharaoh. There's going to be a lot of different interviews coming out because there's a lot of Total War creators that are getting interviews and so on, but in this interview, it was myself, Monsters Abound, and a few others. We're going to be talking about what's been shown in games so far, obviously through all the different reveals, and yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to have some background footage of some battles that I did. I'm going to let the interview play out, and if anything important pops up, then I'll just, put my thoughts in. But without further ado, yeah, let's begin.
So Monsters Bound has asked the first question. So he said that there is 4 Egyptian, 2 Canaanite, and 2 Hittite factions, but no Mycenaeans. Is there potential for them to be included in future content?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Unfortunately, right now we are not talking about our DLC plans, but you're right in the account of the factions that are included in the main game.
Yeah, basically we do want to make the ultimate Bronze Age game, but we do believe that Egypt and the Hittites and the Canaanites being in between those large factions are the most important that we want to focus on, and those are the ones that we will be focusing on.
But Mr. Smart Donkey has now asked the second question. So he's asked, how large is the campaign map in comparison to maybe like other Total War games? Maybe in like terms of provinces or settlement counts. Sorry, that's also something that was asked by Warrior of Sparta as well. So they're clearly thinking the same way you putting it.
Yeah. Let me take this one. The campaign map is a little bit hard for me to compare because on one hand, in absolute units, it's bigger than, let's say, I don't know, previous games. But on the other hand, for example, we have reduced the number of overall provinces and increased the space between cities. So basically, you have like a more hinterland outside of settlements. And I think that the intent for this, apart from authenticity, has been also to create opportunities for less settlement battles and more open field battles. And we've seen that in our internal statistics, but we are hoping that we are going to be seeing this much more in the live game and in the tests. But in general, based on number of regions, the number of regions is reduced, let's say, compared to previous titles, but the overall size in internal, internal technical units is actually on par or slightly bigger.
I do believe that it is currently in absolute size. It is the biggest Total War map that we've had when you don't count the Immortal Empires one for a single game. Yeah.
I see the next question, which is an extension to this one. I'm going to take it immediately without you needing to read it. So basically, the system of the provinces is a bit of a mix between what you can expect and a bit new additions. We're currently focusing on the battle features, so I'm not giving up a lot of information on campaign. Excuse me for that. It's how it is. But basically, yes, we do have the traditional provinces with regions, and there's also a little bit on top, which we are going to be talking about later on, I guess.
There is a new feature that we were also introducing for the campaign map, but we will be revealing that at a bit of a later date, where I do believe all of you guys are still going to be invited, and we'll learn about it pretty soon.
Got another question from Monsters Abound. Said no on DLC or Bloodpack, but you know if Blood will come, if we'll be able to run in the rivers, kind of like and be tracked on chariots, and I'm guessing like grass, like we did with the previous game that you guys did at Troy. Is that something that is a feature that is going to be prevalent in Pharaoh?
Yeah. We are also internally quite fond of those features, so I see no reason not to, reintroduce them here as well.
Yeah, we're not really talking about DLCs, but I mean, the Bloodpack is kind of a different thing on its own, and it's not really a secret. So yes, so all the features that were present before, like the blood running in the rivers, the tracks that the chariots leave, those are going to be present.
Nice. I think we're all excited to see that again. So Grudges has actually raised his hand. I can see it's not well indicated, but he has raised his hand here. So Grudges, if you go ahead with your question.
Hiya, can you tell us more about dynamic weather, how it'll affect the battlefield? Is it RNG focused? Is it location focused?
Okay, so about a dynamic weather, it is both RNG and location focused. So there is always a random chance that a certain weather will have the battle start with at a certain location, or it might change during the battle, again with RNG. But they're going to be logical in a way so that it would be extremely rare for you to see rain in the desert and impossible to see a thunderstorm in the desert or something like that, as well as for an example, the sweltering weather is not going to be present in the mountains. Sandstorm is most likely to hit in the desert, while not as likely to hit in other places, and that sort of thing. So there is a random element to it. There's always going to be some predictions it works similarly to how it used to in previous Total War titles, where at the start battle screen you will see what the weather is like at the moment. You will see a prediction, which is possible of what the weather can change to, if it will, because it might not change. It will not change every single battle during the battle itself. And you can decide whether to wait it out, whether to start deploying now, if you are on the attacking side, of course. If you are on the defending side, you are not given that option because it's only logical. Now, the weather itself is going to affect the battles. All the different weather types are going to have different impacts on your troops. Even the wind and the sand is going to play a huge amount, as well as the sweltering weather, which is going to tire out your troops faster. But also the weather can change the terrain dynamically as well. For example, if you get a rain, if the battle doesn't start with the rain, but at some point it changes to rain, it might change some of the normal terrain into mud, which of course brings with it its different gameplay effects. Or if you get a sandstorm in the middle of the battle, you might expect certain areas that were previously normal ground to be covered by sand, which will make moving through them more difficult and tire out your troops faster, and that sort of things. So it will play a huge role on how things fold out in the battle. But again, it will not be like that in every single battle. There is an RNG chance to it. In custom battles, you can of course adjust the weather to your liking. You can adjust it, the starting weather, you can adjust what the weather could change and so on, but that's for custom battles only.
We'll go to Colonel Dammers, who said that in the siege map, the temple provided healing when it was under the defender control. Are there any other systems similar to this that are maybe not strictly entirely 100% historical, or is that kind of like just the only thing we're going to see?
This we have a few things that can be stretching a little bit on the historical side, though we are kind of closely examining all of them to see which ones we are actually going to keep in the main game. So for an example, all the victory points in the settlements, in both major and minor settlements, are going to be offering some sort of buff, though usually it is a morale buff of sorts. Perhaps the one that is offering healing is the most far-fetched in terms of historical authenticity that we can think of. There are certain aspects, other aspects to it that we are kind of looking at more closely at the moment. For an example, like we know that flaming arrows have been used, though probably not to the extent that they can be utilized at certain points in Total War Pharaoh. We are also looking if slings could actually fire flaming projectiles at a time, and examining those closely. But those are the only ones that I believe are the most far-fetched that you can currently experience in the game. And we are actively looking to see if we are going to be keeping them the way as they are right now. Now, a big disclaimer here is that this is still an alpha build that you have played, and we are doing a lot more reevaluation, gathering feedback from our QA and designers and everyone, and are still actively working on implementing all those things. We were especially talking about the temple type of victory point and whether we should keep it to restoring health, because initially we thought about it that it would be better to restore stamina as well, because it kind of makes more sense maybe, but then this is assigned to the fountain types of victory points, and we wanted to have more variety to make the gameplay more interesting, and we do enjoy the way the gameplay is unfolding with that sort of things, but we'll see if we're going to keep it as it is at the moment.
Thank you very much, Milcho. Now another question from Mr. Smart Donkey, and this one's quite a good question as well. He wants to know if we can go into more detail about the unit types. So he's seen that there's archers, slingers, and javelins in the battle preview build. Are there any other ranged units? And also what about the tiers of units as well? So tier 3 to tier 4, and are they similar to how many types do you get in terms of like light, medium, and heavy tiers? Like, are there any other tier representatives out there?
Okay, so this is quite a large question because there's a lot explaining that I can do about it, but I will try to be brief about it. Now, first of all, in types of ranged units, we do have archers, slingers, and javelins. There are some units that can throw certain types of clubs that are actually historically authentic. We did research about it, but they're not considered to be missile units. So the three main types of missile units are the ones that you mentioned. In terms of tiers, we have divided the units into 6 different tiers, but in Total War Pharaoh, the strength increase for each tier is not as powerful as it is in some of the previous games. Now the tiers can be noticed in the unit info panel. It always writes which tier the unit is, but it can also be noticed on the borders of the icons of the different units. There are bronze, double bronze, silver, double silver, and gold and double gold borders for the different tiers, respectively, going from 1 bronze to double gold as being the highest tier of unit. So this is how they're represented. Now, in terms of light, medium, and heavy units, they again are going to play a huge role in the battles. But unlike some of the previous games, we've really wanted to make sure that you can see all types of units on the different tiers that you will go throughout your campaign and through the game. For example, previously heavy units were mostly in the higher tiers, where here we wanted really to make sure that there are light units in the higher tiers as well as some heavy units in the lower tiers. Now, to make this possible, because heavy units are usually going to be stronger than light units in 1v1 combat, we've introduced one new feature and kind of improved several of the already existing features. The new feature that we are introducing is the so-called armor degradation. Now, each unit will not only have armor and an armor value, which will determine how much damage it takes when it gets hit. It will also have a quality of the armor, which will determine how fast this armor is going to degrade as the unit participates in battles. So, for example, we can have a unit with heavy but low quality made armor, which is always going to start with a lot of armor value at the start of the battle. But as the battle progresses, it will start losing more and more of that armor because it will simply get not destroyed, but damaged during the battle. And units with high quality armor are mostly going to keep the same armor score throughout the whole battle, which kind of opens different tactical decisions that can be made, because you can understand that the most impact your low quality armor heavy infantry is going to have is right at the very start of the battle, and it will only get worse from there. But it will also make them much more prone to harassment and that sort of tactics. So you need to be careful about that. And this way, a unit that is like a high tier light armored unit is always going to have a very high quality armor, which will make them last a lot more on the battle as it goes. Now, this is the biggest thing about that armor degradation, and we are currently looking to expose it better in the UI, because in the battles you fought on the preview build, it can be noticed as a little green that turns to orange and turns to red symbol on the unit icon. But we are looking to make it more representable to be better noticed, because it plays an important role. So yeah, this is the new feature. A few other things are the way exhaustion works. Exhaustion will now work a lot more against the heavier type of units. And sand is going to play a huge role in that. And as you can imagine, in a game for about ancient Egypt and the Hittite Empire, sand is going to be in a lot of places. On the maps is also going to matter a lot, as well as sweltering weather and that sort of conditions. Now, I could go into more details, but I would rather not explain too much about it. So yeah, this is kind of the gist of it.
Warrior Sparta has asked, will there be any hero-style units?
The simple answer here is no. So this is probably warrants a little bit of wider explanation. The way we approach Total War Pharaoh is as a primarily historical Total War. So there is no basically need nor justification for taking legendary or mythological approach with no units or anything on the battlefield. Everything is in the vein of the classical Total War historical titles.
Yeah, the base of it is that some of the most important heroes are going to be strong on the battlefield, but they're still going to have bodyguards and are mostly going to be relying on the bodyguards. They are not going to be able to go and single-handedly kill even like 10 entities or less. They are going to work mostly like previous historical titles that we've done. Of course, they are going to be very important on the battlefield. Losing your general is going to cause a huge impact on the morale of your army. Again, this is not a new feature for the Total War titles, but they are not going to be single entities fighting it out, being more powerful than the rest of them.
Thank you so much. I think it's also worth pointing out that there is still, like, on the campaign side of things, and we touched on it a little bit with in the preview event, there is still that element of getting attached to your kind of like the faction leader, where you've got like icons that you can attach to them, and that will in turn assign them to like different types of bodyguard units as well.
Yeah, this is kind of a new feature that we've added, where you can customize not only your bodyguard but your hero more. Now you can choose the weapons that they're using, and they will actually be switching to those weapons in game as well as choose either to mount them on a chariot or not, and do the same for the bodyguards that they're going to be playing with. You can choose your bodyguards to be archers, spearmen, Kopesh fighters, and so on.
Nice. Great Book of Grudges has his hand raised, so we'll go over to him.
Funny enough, you just answered my question regarding bodyguards, but I've got another one here. So how will it be for like map variety? Will there be loads of different types of minor settlement, major settlements, land battles, and so on?
Well, basically, yes. In terms of map variety, we are going to have all the land battles, minor settlements, major settlements, ambush style of battles as well as a new map type called forts, which is kind of similar to a major settlement, but not exactly a settlement. In that regard, the only map type that we have in previous games that is not going to be present in this title is the so-called choke point battles, because the way we have developed the maps in Total War Pharaoh, and kind of similarly in Total War Troy before that, is that they have a lot more varied features on them, as well as the dynamic terrain and dynamic weather, as we mentioned. So we kind of encourage people to look for their own choke points and interesting decisions to make on the battle maps themselves. So in that regard, this is basically it. Now, the new features we are adding to the battle maps are, as we already talked about, the dynamic weather terrain. The way fire works is also going to be a bit different on the battle maps. It's not something new, but it can be utilized to burn certain terrain types away from the battle map. Now, if you see that the enemy is trying to ambush you in the forests, you can set the forest on fire, which will force the enemy to try and, well, they can remain in the forest, but they will take a lot of damage from the fire and probably die out. So they will be forced to move their army out of the forest and seek shelter elsewhere. Same goes for the tall grass. If you're expecting that certain units can sneak through the tall grass without you seeing them, you can set it on fire, and the fire will spread around. Depending on the weather condition, it will spread faster or not spread at all, or get quickly snuffed out. So yeah, those are mostly the types of battle maps that we're going to have.
Nice. So we've got Mr. Smart Donkey, who's asked a couple of questions now. We'll go for his first one, and this is following back to when we were talking about the kind of faction leaders. What happens if they die in battle? Will they kind of be in a couple of turns come back and they're kind of counted as wounded, or will they die? Will your faction leader actually die? And does that also work similar for generals as opposed to the faction leader? He also then asks as a follow-up, can generals die of old age on the campaign? But I think that might be a bit more of a campaign question.
It is kind of a campaign question, but I get where it's coming from. And the simple answer is that right now generals are fully mortal. They can die on the campaign, on the battlefields, and stay dead in the campaign. The faction leaders right now use that wounded mechanic, so they do not completely die and will return after a while. This is, and they do not age and die from old age. So I would say that this is probably a situation that's going to be, true also on release. We have selected not to, focus on a family tree or dynasty management system for release. We'll see how it goes afterwards. But right now, the faction leaders are, let's say, they carry the personalities that are important for the period, and we, we do not afford to lose them in the game. So right now they are using the wounded mechanic.
Yeah, and you will understand why once we start revealing more of the campaign features.
Right. And then Mr. Smart Donkey has also asked regarding naval battle interactions. How does that work? Is it similar to Warhammer, where if two armies meet at sea, it goes to kind of like an island battle, or is it going to be an auto-resolve?
Yes, it's going to be similar to how it works in Warhammer. We are not going to have full-out naval battles where you are fighting on ships. We simply do not believe that this is the right era to do that sort of stuff. Naval warfare is really not that developed at this point in history. But of course, if you encounter another army while you are sailing down the Nile or in the sea, you can still fight a battle on either the land close to the Nile or on the island somewhere in the sea.
Nice. And then Warrior Aspire has asked, I'm not sure, Mike, you might have mentioned this, but is there a family tree at all?
I called for it. I realize now. So we are not including the family tree on release. Our focus has been on battles and politics. Let's put it that way. It's not out of the question, but I'm not promising also for after release. So yeah, that's regarding the family tree.
Monsters Bound has actually come in with another question as well. So there was a hint of Egypt in Troy and events between like the gods happening with when you saw like distant on the campaign map. Is there a chance that I'm guessing that you're saying that Egypt has the same, or is there potential plans for Egypt and Troy that couldn't do them justice in a smaller content pack?
A little bit of both. So this is, right up my job description. I'm primarily, focused on basically planning our future projects and how they align. So yes, I can confirm. You can see it at the, final content of Troy. We already are looking at Egypt. We had Memnon. We had, in the mythic pack on the horizons, those elements. It made a lot of sense entering into this Bronze Age era to think about the full extent that this setting can be realized. And as you also have noted, most of that just doesn't have place for it in a more focused title that is with a strong particular topic like Troy was, but it warrants a bigger game, and this is the bigger game basically. And yeah, even our plans are to make it as big and thorough recreation of the era as possible. But yeah, this will come in time.
So yeah, Colonel Danos has said that Egypt is pretty rich in mythology. I think I know where this question's going already. Are there any plans to make more kind of like mythic type units, or is that off the card, or is that going to be saved, for potential future content? Essentially, are there going to be mythic stuff upon release? I think you're asking there.
So there are no plans for mythic content, mythic, legendary, or fantastical content for the game right now. Unlike Troy, where, for example, the subject matter was kind of mixed between reality, legend, myth. Here we don't have that, and it doesn't. We feel that it's not a necessary element for us to represent the Bronze Age collapse and the era. It's more of a, the topic here is more of a heroic retelling of these later days of a large era. The Bronze Age, ends. The world is swept by sea peoples. There is most of known civilizations collapse into dark ages. Egypt survives, but by a narrow margin, and it's about more about basically how do you fight for power in a time of crisis, and what do you do with your power afterwards? What kind of pharaoh you could be, or high king if you're a Hittite, and basically it's about exploring topics about rulership and the path to power, and then your legacy, your what type of ruler you choose to be. So I think that basically there is a lot of historical materials, much more than just for Mycenaean Greeks, and also a lot of historical context and topics that warrant thorough exploration in the game. So we don't really need to go into mythology. There is naturally a religion system in the game. That's a given, but we don't plan to have mythical units.
Thank you very much, Maya. Grudges is also mentioned, and this is a campaign question, so you can go in as much detail or as little detail as you want with this one, I guess. But can we share a bit more on campaign customization?
Campaign customization is a new feature for us that is basically there's a lot of hope regarding it, and it could develop even further than it is now. But it stems from a core belief, I would say, in our team that basically we want to give the players the tools to make the game perfect for them, perfectly suitable for them. So basically campaign customization takes that into on another level. So it allows a lot of variables from the game to be switched on and off or tweaked. You can access things like AI aggression. You can access things like visibility, shroud, a lot of, there's economic options. There's a lot of things that you could actually, customize from this feature set. You could select, things that are more gamish, for example, like random starting locations, randomized starting locations. You can tailor your experience to your liking. Obviously, the more you know the game, the more these options will speak to you. But internally, we are hopeful that this basically will allow players to really customize their experience to their liking in a great way. We believe this is the point of it.
Yeah, it really expands the difficulty settings from just easy to normal, very hard, legendary, and so on. You can really customize it a lot more with this way. Again, making it much more replayable. You can even turn completely off certain features and mechanics if you don't like them. But as Maya started answering from the start, we will be talking more about that in the campaign review.
Monsters Bound has said he likes the weather changing mechanics. Is there anything in the campaign that will give you ability to specifically see how long weather will change for, like maybe an ability that faction can see, like give a timer to when that's a bit to hit for your advantage? You definitely can in campaigns, so Milcher, I'll pass over to you.
Well, to be honest, I'm not completely sure if we have any abilities like that in the campaign. Certainly, if the weather is going to change, you are going to get some predictions as to what weather it can change to. For example, you can never be surprised by having a prediction of a weather turning from normal to sweltering, but then it turns out that it turns from normal to rain. That just doesn't make sense. You are not going to have accurate positions, precisely accurate positions to know exactly at which point in the battle this will happen. So how much time needs to pass for this to happen. But yeah, I don't think I can really answer this question completely. I don't think there are currently any abilities that can influence the way you predict the weather on campaign. Maya can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think
as far as I know, you don't predict the weather in the campaign. You get predictions before battle, and the predictions are correct. So it's, as you said, you cannot, have a prediction for sandstorm and it turns into a rainstorm or something. But apart from that, the different effects are based on geography, and so you can't have a sandstorm in, I don't know, in Hatusha, or in anywhere where there should not be. And apart from that, I don't think that there is a forecast system for weather outside of battles. But who knows what our designers will come up with. And game mechanic that happens. So you do have obviously the invasion of sea peoples, multiple times actually, because it's staggered. But this is not what you need to do to win. This is just part of the journey.
Unless you disable them from the campaign customization, then You will not have sea peoples invading them.
Then you're not going to have Bronze Age co-ops. You're going to have right before you have Bronze Age co-ops.
Yes.
Okay, so we've learned quite a bit. No Mythos DLC is planned, which, yeah, kind of makes sense if they want to go for a true historical. I think we learned quite enough for Pharaoh. At this point, the video should have been out a little bit after a few battles that I would have done that you would have seen on screen anyway whilst watching this. But I must say, it does look interesting. Again, we've seen nothing of campaign, so until campaign comes out, I can't really pass true judgment from what I've seen, because, well, I'm mostly a campaign player, I don't do battles. I'll be painfully obvious with you, the battles were just so stupidly easy. It's super weird, but hey, I guess they want to do the build super easy for game journalists. I really wish they had a second build for, you know, actual players and not IGN. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the discoveries in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. There's going to be a bit of Pharaoh today, and then we'll go back to the regularly scheduled programming. But yeah, I'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.